Well, in the epistle this week, I shared with you a quote from the 20th century Christian mystic Thomas Merton. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Thomas Merton. He was a Trappist monk. Well, in the quote that I used, Merton said, "If the you of 5 years ago doesn't consider the you of today a heretic, then you are not growing spiritually." I'll say it again so you can think about it. If the you of 5 years ago doesn't consider the you of today to be a heretic, then you're not growing spiritually. If your understanding of God, if your understanding of Jesus, if your understanding of the Bible stories is the same as it was 5 years ago, then you're not growing spiritually. Today we are celebrating the Epiphany. If you look in the dictionary, the word epiphany means when you begin to understand something in a new way, when you begin to see something in a new light. Epiphany are those light bulb moments where the light bulb appears above your head and you go, aha! You become more illumined, more enlightened. You know that you are growing spiritually when you have more and more of these light bulb moments, more and more of these epiphanies, when you start growing in your spiritual awareness. The Magi in this gospel story at the Feast of the Epiphany, they are the first people ever to become aware that the Christ is born in human form. They understood it even before Mary and Joseph understood it. It took Mary and Joseph many years to understand what was happening with Jesus. But the Magi were the first people. They knew it right away. They saw that light. They had that epiphany. Now, who were these people, the Magi? Well, we know very little about them. In fact, all we know about them comes from this gospel story we read this morning from Matthew's gospel. Matthew is the only person to write the story of the Magi. It is nowhere else in the Bible. So all we know is just what we read here. Notice, Matthew said that they were wise men from the east. He never said there were 3 of them, and he never said they were kings. I think it's that Christmas carol, "We 3 kings of Orient are," that sets in our mind that they were 3 kings. But it doesn't say that in Scripture. It says that they were wise men. They were people who possessed wisdom. Now, wisdom is very different than knowledge. People who possess knowledge know a lot of stuff. They know a lot of facts. People who possess wisdom have a higher level of spiritual knowing. And that's who the Magi were. I said last week that Magi is the root word of magic. Now, we get confused because today people who are magicians are people who fool us with sleight of hand and tricks and illusion. But really, the word magical means mystical. Magicians were people who had a special gift. They were people who could see into the spiritual realm. Maybe they were astrologers or shamans or clairvoyants. We don't know. But they were people who had a higher spiritual knowing. They weren't like magicians of today who are trying to fool us with illusion. The Magi were people who were trying to reveal to us the truth. They were truth tellers, and they wanted us to awaken to the truth, that we ourselves could have that same epiphany, as the Magi. And so, I want us to look at this story to see, what does it mean for us today? Because we're not coming here every Sunday to get a history lesson. I mean, maybe you like to learn about history, and I think history is great. But first of all, remember, the Bible is not historically accurate. They're stories. This is the parable of the Magi. A parable is a story. Now, you may come here every Sunday to gain some knowledge, and knowledge is good. But I think we're here every Sunday to grow in wisdom. So let me give you an example. You already know that the light came in Jesus. Don't you already know that? When you were a kid and you heard this story, you already knew it. So why do you need to come here today and hear it again? The purpose of our being here each Sunday is to say, what does this have to do with me? And what the story of the Magi is about is it's about you. It's about you knowing that the light of the Christ is also in you. So, Jesus, as an adult, would tell us, you are the light of the world. But we really don't believe that. We just want to keep worshiping that baby as the only light. But the whole purpose of the story of the Magi is to say this light is within you. Now, I saw that bumper sticker the other day, maybe you've seen it, that says, wise men still seek him. Wise men still seek him. And I really like the sentiment of that, but let us grow in our understanding of that. Wise men and women today who are churchgoers, what are they seeking? Him? They're seeking to know Jesus? Don't we already know Jesus? I mean, don't you already know the facts and the stories of his life? You already know about Jesus. What do wise people seek? Not knowledge of the man, but wisdom of his light. That's why we're here. That's what the spiritual journey is all about. Not to learn facts about Jesus, but to awaken to that light, that Christ light that is within us. So yes, most people on the Feast of the Epiphany, they're celebrating the fact that that light was born into that baby over 2,000 years ago. And that's true. But the story is more than a history lesson. It's about us. It's about us awakening to that light that is within us. That light is the light that has the power to heal and transform us. And that is why the Magi brought those three gifts. Gold. If you were here last Sunday, I talked about alchemy, about how alchemists take base metals, and by exposing it to the fire, by exposing it to the light, they transform that base metal into gold. Frankincense is an incense. Incense is used by our Eastern brothers and sisters in prayer and meditation because it transforms us. It opens up our senses to the spiritual realm. The thing I love most about the story of the Magi is that it says they were from the East. When I was a little boy and we had our little nativity set in our house, I was so fascinated by the Magi because they were exotic. They had dark skin and they wore turbans. They were not from the Abrahamic faith traditions. They were from the Eastern faith traditions. and they were the first to discover the Christ light. That's what I love so much about this story. But our Eastern brothers and sisters use incense. And then the other gift that they bring is myrrh. Myrrh is a tree resin that was used for medicinal purposes as a healing balm. And so the Magi's gifts are symbolic. They are gifts of transformation and healing. And so what it means for us is that when we keep our focus on the star, which we heard this morning in our words of integration, the star represents God. When we keep our eyes focused on that star and allow ourselves to be guided by it, we will experience gifts of healing and transformation in our lives. That's what the story of the Magi is. Now, there's one person in the story this morning that I have not yet talked about, and that is King Herod. Of all the people in this story, the person we historically know the most about is King Herod. We don't know a lot of history about the Magi, and we don't know a lot of history about Jesus. But we have actual historic records of King Herod. And what we know about him is that he was a man of great ego. He was a man who wanted to impress the people of his day with grandiose buildings and wealth. And when King Herod heard about this light of the world, he wanted to extinguish it because it would usurp his power. And so he asked these truth tellers, these Magi, to find out where the light is. Not so he could pay homage to it, but so he could extinguish it. And notice the Magi, once they discover the light, they don't follow the commands of Herod anymore. They resist. And it says, they returned by another road. Meaning, when we discover the light for ourselves, we no longer follow the road of ego, of wealth, of power. When we discover the light, our lives are transformed, and we begin to follow the road of the Spirit, the spiritual path. And so today on Epiphany Sunday, I don't want us to just honor and remember the Magi. The whole purpose of today is for us to dedicate ourselves to becoming the Magi, to becoming the truth tellers, to becoming the people who are the light, who are bringing the light and the gifts. It's about us. So let us be like the Magi in 2017. Let us not follow the commands of the Herods of our time, those who are about wealth and power and ego. And let us follow the star, the light, God, and let that be our guiding force, our guiding light. And let us, like the Magi, keep watch. Keep watch in the new year with great anticipation, with great expectation, because God has some great epiphanies in store for all of us in 2017. Namaste.